This dish can be found on many tables across many African countries during the holidays, as well as when there's a large gathering of people for a party or celebration. While the basic ingredients are the same, there are many different variations depending on where you're from. It has been debated so much, there was actually an online Twitter war on which country had the best recipe. We're exploring the history and origins of jollof rice. I'm your host, Glenn Warren, and welcome to another serving of Seasons Eatings, the podcast which explores the history and origins of your favorite Christmas foods. Seasons Eatings can be found wherever you download your favorite podcast. Seasons Eatings is also found on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. If you love the show, then I humbly ask you to share this podcast with someone you think would love to hear more about the history of Christmas and the foods which shape the holiday we love so much. And if you want to get me suggestions for future episodes, just email me at seasonseatingspodcast@gmail.com. All the links can be found in the show notes at seasonseatingspodcast.com. In Nigeria, Christmas is a time to put on fine new clothes and travel to spend time with family. Most Nigerian families start their joyous celebrations on Christmas Eve, and they last well into Christmas morning, when Christians attend church and then return home to celebrate more. One particular dish stands out as a true Nigerian Christmas classic: jollof rice. Jollof rice is typically made with long grain rice, tomatoes, chilies, onions, spices, and some other vegetables, and usually some meat in a single pot, although its ingredients and preparation vary across different regions. Jollof is a rice dish that originated in Western Africa. Its exact birthplace is a controversial topic, though. According to the African food historian Fran Oseo Asare, the origins of the dish can be traced to North Senegal, to the Wolof or Jollof Empire, which ruled the Senegambia region of West Africa from the 14th to the 16th century. It now spans parts of today's Senegal, the Gambia, and Mauritania. It's said that French colonizers brought broken rice from Indochina to replace the current food crops in the region. Gradually, broken rice became more popular than the whole rice grains, which led to the creation of jollof rice. And since it's thought that African rice was originally made by the Wolof people, a large ethnic group in Senegal and parts of the Gambia and southern Mauritania, historians say the word jollof is based on the group's name. The dish grew popular across the region and is believed to have influenced the Cajun dishes of jambalaya and gumbo as well. Food and agricultural historian James C. McCann speculated that it was unlikely that the dish could have naturally spread from Senegal to its current range, since a similar cultural diffusion is not seen in linguistic, historical, or political patterns. Instead, he proposed that the dish spread with the Mali Empire, especially the Jula tradespeople who dispersed widely to the regional commercial and urban centers, taking with them economic arts of blacksmithing, small-scale marketing, and rice agronomy, as well as the religion of Islam. Fast forward to the 1800s, in the Jollof Empire there lived a chef, cooking meals at ceremonies, experimenting as she went. Penda Mabai wasn't exactly a Jollof woman. In fact, she's believed to have come from Wallo, another one of the 4 vassal states from the old Wolof Empire. As white people came into West Africa with their colonialism, they also brought a wide variety of food from their travels, mainly from South America. They came with food like cassava, pineapples, and even tomatoes. For Penda Mabai, fresh food meant fresh opportunities to experiment. One recipe led to another, and Penda landed a job as a chef at the colonial governor's residence in St. Louis. One meal had a reputation in the governor's residence. It was a one-pot combo of barley, fish, and vegetables cooked together. A barley shortage came around the time that Asian rice was landing on Senegal's shores, and in typical Penda fashion, she substituted rice for barley. Marc Tefumier, emeritus professor of agronomy, proposes a more recent origin for the dish, which may only have appeared as a consequence of the colonial promotion of intensive peanut cropping in central Senegal for the French oil industry, and where commensurate reduction in the planted area of traditional millet and sorghum staples were compensated by imports of broken rice from Southeast Asia. This gave the local cooks no choice but to use their then unfamiliar product. There's another theory about Jollof's origins. According to Mamadou Diouf, a professor of African history at Columbia University, Jollof rice is military. Look at it this way. You're a colonial officer. How do you feed a large Senegalese colonial army? You get rice, tomatoes, fresh meat or fish, and throw it all into a big pot. According to this theory, it's probably how Jollof traveled across West Africa, militarily, as colonial forces found effective ways to feed their soldiers, especially around the world wars. What is certain, of course, is that Jollof rice diffused across West Africa, just like everything else diffused. Fashion like Senegal fabric or music. It could also have been the Dula people or the tribes of merchants who traveled across West Africa selling goods and leaving bits of their culture everywhere they went. There are a few accounts of its footprint in Nigeria, though. The oldest that we know is being in the Kudeti Book of Yoruba Cookery, first published in 1934. I suspect the original recipe for jollof was in there. Ozaz Suko says, Ozaz is a culinary wizard and food enthusiast, and she has a 1947 The Owo Cookery Book to back this original recipe theory up. In fact, the recipe from this booklet included cabbage or spinach tete as an ingredient. It also used to be spelled with an extra F at the end. Jollof rice wasn't at parties when I was young. Sharafat Hassan, a 51-year-old caterer in Ajuba, says, what was common was pounded yam, amala, and all that. Imagine this, you're planning a wedding party in the 60s. It's not a big ceremony, so you're only expecting 200 to 300 people. Let's cook rice, someone suggests. You think about it for a moment and know it's never going to happen. Not rice. The problem that stood in the way of people and their party was stones. In those days, Sharafat explains, rice had stones. Even local rice these days still have stones. The only rice that didn't have stones were Uncle Ben's and Aunt Caroline rice. But the price of Uncle Ben's mostly kept jollof rice in family kitchens and on special events like Sunday afternoons and festival meals. By the late 60s and early 70s, oil had become more attractive for the Nigerian government, and agriculture was taking a back seat. One consequence of this, besides the disappearance of industries and groundnut pyramids, was higher importation. In fact, the share of rice in the Nigerian diet went from 1% in 1960 to 7% in 1980. And that rise is mostly because they imported more from other countries. Since a number of modern-day African countries were part of West Africa, there's a lot of debate about which country is the true birthplace of jollof rice. West African countries typically have at least one variant form of the dish, with Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Cameroon particularly competitive as to which country makes the best jollof. In the mid-2010s, this expanded into the Jollof Wars. In 2014, the hashtag Jollof Wars broke out on Twitter between Ghanaians and Nigerians as Africans argued over the true inventors of jollof. The gastro-nationalistic rivalry is especially prominent between Nigeria and Ghana. In 2016, Sister Deborah released the song Ghana Jollof, which denigrated the Nigerian version, and Nigerians for being proud of their version. Soon after, a physical fight over insufficient jollof supplies at a Ghanaian political rally sparked delighted mocking of Ghanaians by Nigerians. Of particular sensitivity in jollof-making communities is the inclusion of non-traditional ingredients, which are defined country by country and are seen as making the jollof inauthentic. In 2014, a recipe released by Jamie Oliver that included cherry tomatoes, coriander, lemon, and parsley, none of which are used in any traditional recipe, caused outrage reactions to the point Oliver's team had to issue a statement. And while we may never be able to say for certain whether jollof is Nigerian or Ghanaian, it's clear that this dish is integral to the culture of both countries and to the people of Nigeria and Ghana living in other parts of the world. The reason why this fare is commonplace at African events is because it's a cultural symbol of national pride, history, and unity. Jollof rice is a celebratory food served at birthdays, graduations, baby naming ceremonies, and of course, Christmas. Nigerians even have a specific type of rice we cook for big parties and weddings. It's called party jollof. It's rich in flavor and has a smoky and semi-burnt taste. If you don't have party jollof at your birthday party or Christmas celebration, then we question if you're really having a Nigerian event in the first place. We'll break down the ingredients of jollof rice and their variations after the break. If you're like me, you have fond memories of Christmases past, when you settled in with your family to watch cherished Christmas classics like Rudolph, Frosty, or maybe you remember trekking to the theater to see big holiday releases like A Christmas Story, Home Alone, and my personal favorite, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. I hope you'll rediscover a piece of that innocence while shopping at retrofestive.ca. While you're here, why not pick up some gifts for your loved ones? We're always posting new items, so be sure to check back often. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. From leg lamps to moose mugs, puzzles and pop culture, Retro Festive is your one-stop online shop for all your holiday gifts. Visit retrofestive.ca and be like Uncle Eddie and get something for you. Something really nice. Don't you wish the holidays would last the entire year? Well, now it can. Head on over to mymerrychristmas.com where you can enjoy the holidays all year long. You can chat with other Christmas enthusiasts on any topic you can think of. Movies, books, cooking, decorating, anything. If it's about Christmas, it's here. Joining My Merry Christmas is completely free. But if you become a Premier member, you can enjoy extra bonuses such as a yearly Christmas card exchange and Kringle Radio, Santa's exclusive Christmas radio station. For only $19.95, you can become a Premier member of mymerrychristmas.com for a full year. So head on over to mymerrychristmas.com and start enjoying Christmas all year long. Rice is as much African as it is Asian. African rice Oryza glaberrima, is one of the 2 rice species in the world. It may have originated in the flood basin of the Niger and carried across West Africa, reaching as far west as Senegal and as east as Chad. For centuries, West Africans cultivated and selected a variety of rice cultivars that suited their various food needs. If you visited different West African countries today, you will find local varieties that are unique to that specific country. Because of their expertise in rice cultivation, many Africans living in Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Gambia region were enslaved and brought to the lowland regions of South Carolina and Georgia to grow rice. These people become ancestors to the Creole Gullah and Geechee peoples in the southern United States. The use of New World tomatoes, tomato paste, capsicum peppers, that is bell, chili, and paprika, Indian curry powder, Mediterranean thyme, and Asian rice varieties may limit the origin of the current dish to no earlier than the 19th century, there being no evidence of the ingredients being locally cultivated and imported before this period. One can argue that this is the origin of jollof rice. This recipe from Senegal and Gambia has fish as the main protein. Jollof rice is a product of their environment as it's heavily reliant on fish. It's also a product of colonial influence with the use of herbs, tomatoes, onions, root vegetables, and vegetables that are not typically indigenous to Senegambia. Senegambian jollof rice is also not for the faint-hearted. There are multiple steps needed to build a ton of flavor and complexity. First, fish is stuffed with an herb paste and lots of onions, parsley, jalapeno, and green onions. The fish is then fried in oil and then set aside. The jollof rice stew is made with onion, tomatoes, tomato paste, ginger, garlic, leftover herb paste, and a fermented fish. Once the stew has come together, the fish is reintroduced with a lot of whole vegetables and root vegetables such as carrot, eggplant, cassava, sweet potato, and cabbage till they're tender. All the vegetables and fish are removed sequentially based on what's cooked first. Broken rice is then introduced into the sauce and then cooked together. The jollof is served in one large bowl and topped with fish and more vegetables. Sierra Leonean jollof is a great transition point between Senegambian jollof and the jollof you will start to see as you move toward the coast towards Nigeria. It includes a lot of the same vegetables such as carrots, cabbage, and peppers, but these vegetables are now chopped up and mixed in. It is also incredibly heavy on the onions. Plus, we lose the use of fish and move on to other choices of protein. The protein, which is usually chicken or beef, is fried in oil. The meat can be removed or kept in. The jollof is started with lots of onions and cooked with tomatoes, tomato paste, seasoning, and some veg. And I've been told that cabbage can either be added in the stew process or added when the rice is mixed in. The stew is divided as Sierra Leone jollof is served with the stew used to make the jollof. The rice of choice varies. Sometimes they use jasmine rice or parboiled rice could be used as well. Depends on the cook. The proteins are kept in with the stew or cooked with the rice. And to cook the rice, the liquid used to steam the protein is also used to cook the rice. Liberian jollof rice might look similar to jambalaya for many people who are unfamiliar with Liberian jollof rice. It includes an assortment of meats like sausage and chicken as well as shrimp. The proteins are fried in oil and then set aside, and the remaining oil is used to make the stew, including the onions, bell peppers, tomatoes, and cut frozen veg. The rice is included, which can be jasmine, and the proteins are reintroduced into the pot and cooked together till the rice is well cooked. It really is a one-pot dish as everything is cooked together. Seasoning is kept to all-purposes seasoning like a bouillon cube, adobo with some addition of curry powder or thyme depending on the cook. Now, when you look up jollof rice on the internet, you will mostly find recipes from Ghana or Nigeria. Ghanaian jollof is similar yet different than other jollof rice options. It probably has the most variation of spices and choices of protein, although only one protein is used per dish, that be chicken or beef or turkey or goat or even guinea fowl. The protein is first steamed with onions and spices, such as garlic, ginger, anise, star anise, and bouillon cubes, to infuse a ton of flavor. When the protein is cooked, it is then fried in oil and set aside. The same oil is then used to make fry the onions, and tomato paste. Then more puree of onions, garlic, and ginger are fried. Ghana jollof uses a considerable amount of ginger and does not usually use any bell pepper in the stew. Usually only Ghanaians outside of Ghana use bell pepper to add more color and sweetness to the jollof, since the tomatoes in the US or the UK are not like Ghanaian tomatoes. A lot of spices are also included in the stew, like anise seeds, star anise, bay leaf, curry, black pepper, and then bouillon cubes. Anise is a very unique flavor to Ghanaian food and had a subtle licorice flavor, and a little goes a long way. Once the stew has been cooked well, the rice is then added. Typical Ghanaian jollof uses a long grain rice, scented jasmine rice. This rice is incredibly starchy and needs to be well washed. And the jollof can be cooked with water, but is most often cooked with liquid used to steam the protein. Nigerian jollof uses far more bell peppers than any other country. You name it, they use it. The bell peppers are blended with the onions, garlic, and ginger, and a little more tomatoes, and then cooked on the side to evaporate as much of the liquid as possible. This concentrated mix is then fried with the onions and tomato paste, just like you will with Ghanaian jollof rice. Although Nigerian jollof uses a variety of spices, it is not to the extent of jollof rice from Ghana. Typically, you'll see curry powder, white pepper, thyme, bay leaf, and a bouillon cube. Some also add herbs like rosemary. The next major difference is that Nigerians use long grain parboiled rice. It's well washed and added to the pot of stew. Nigerian jollof rice is usually served with the fried protein and maybe Nigerian style salad. And if you're Nigerian or Ghanaian, living in studying in the West, most likely the US or the UK, and you have a small get-together for the holidays with some friends, and some of them are Caucasian, and you offer them jollof rice. They try the first spoonful, and their mouths are on fire. The heat from the rice is nothing like they've ever tasted. By the time they've gotten used to it, though, they love it. This is most likely how most modern Westerners experience jollof rice. In the US, there's actually a jollof festival where chefs participate in culinary battles to see who can create the tastiest version. Hundreds of applicants representing a wide range of West African countries compete to create the top jollof dish. The judges sample the entrees in a blind tasting to prevent any accusation of favoritism, and attendees get to try it all and then vote on the winner. Nigeria had also organized the first ever Jollof Rice national competition on the occasion of World Jollof Rice Day on August 22nd. Free Me TV also put out an EP of holiday music called A Jollof Christmas, and you can find it on Spotify to play when you prepare your jollof for your own Christmas meal. So crank up those tunes and experience a traditional dish from West Africa this holiday season, jollof rice. I'm your host, Glenn Warren, and thank you for listening to this serving of Seasons Eatings. Seasons Eatings is available wherever you get your favorite podcast, and also on my newest partner, Herd FM. Herd.fm builds each listener a unique interest profile. This means the homepage of your app is made just for you, and you'll always have a new podcast to discover that's exactly to your taste. The more you listen, the more Herd.fm learns what you like. Head on over to Herd.fm and download the app to your favorite device. Please, if you can leave a review about the show so we can spread the Christmas cheer. And if you let me know you've left a review, I'll send you a Seasons Eating sticker as a personal thank you. Also, I would love to hear from you. Send me an email at seasonseatingspodcast.gmail.com to let me know how you like the show, suggestions for future episodes, or just even to say hi. And I know we all get busy. So even sharing the podcast with someone who loves Christmas would be a great help. And if you're feeling extra generous this season, you can buy me an eggnog. Head on over to seasonseatingspodcast.com and click on the little cup in the corner. Each small donation helps with the daily running of the podcast and is greatly appreciated. Thank you for listening, and tune in again for another serving of Seasons Eatings. All music for Seasons Eatings is used under the Creative Commons license.